We begin with a dramatic rescue. Earlier today in central Gaza, Israeli special forces were able to extract 4 hostages from captivity alive. The army released footage, which it says shows 25-year-old Noah Argamani entering a helicopter during the rescue operation. You see it right there. 3 men were also brought out alive. Hamas militants kidnapped all 4 of them at the Nova Music Festival during the terror attacks on October 7th last year. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has called it a remarkable rescue. He has vowed to bring home the remaining hostages.
Her first moments of freedom after more than 8 months in captivity. Noah Argamani reunited with her family at an Israeli hospital. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was also there to welcome her home. Footage of Hamas abducting Noah and her boyfriend in the October 7 terror attacks was among the first to emerge. 3 men were also freed in the operation: Almog Muir Jan, Andrei Kozlov, and Shlomi Ziv. It's Israel's biggest rescue operation of the war so far. Netanyahu vowed to bring the remaining hostages home.
Israel just carried out a remarkable rescue operation of 4 hostages held by Hamas. This operation required ingenuity and courage of the highest degree, and our soldiers performed in an unmatchable way. We're committed to getting the release of all the hostages, and we expect Hamas to release them all. But if they don't, we'll do whatever it takes to get them all back home.
Israel released this footage, which it says shows 3 hostages being freed. The news sparked celebrations outside the hospital and was announced to beachgoers in Tel Aviv. But in Gaza, people are mourning the dead. The Hamas government media office says Israeli airstrikes in central Gaza killed more than 200 people. Hundreds more are injured in the same area where the hostages were rescued. Hospitals are overwhelmed. A resident describes what she saw at the Nusayrat refugee camp.
People were standing on the road, thinking they're safe. Suddenly a jet struck them. Now they're dead. Children were on that street. They had nothing to do with this. They were innocent.
The Israeli occupation army committed a horrific massacre in Nusayrat camp. The occupation directly targeted civilians in Nusayrat market, which was busy with vendors, customers and refugees.
Israel says it was targeting militant infrastructure. The Palestinian Authority is calling for an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council.
All right, I want to bring in our correspondent in Jerusalem, Tanya Kramer. She's been on this story for us all day. Tanya, the Israeli defense minister calling this a daring operation that took months to plan. What has the army said about this operation?
Well, first of all, I think it's a very emotional day here in Israel. A lot of people were celebrating the news, and the Israeli army said that this was a very risky daytime operation based on intelligence. They were supported by, the airstrikes and artillery fire, heavy fighting also in that area. And they have been rescuing those 4 hostages. They said they were held in 2 apartment blocks, apparently not really very far from each other. One of the hostages, a young woman, Noah Argamani, she was held alone in one of the apartments, and the other 3 were held together. So they managed to extract them from there, as the army said, under heavy fire, and then bringing those to the beach area of Gaza, and then take them from there with helicopters to Tel Aviv. And just a word to Noa Argamani, she became a bit the face on October 7th. She was taken by motorcycle by the militants to Gaza. Her boyfriend is still in Gaza as hostage. His fate is unknown, and that also is, of course, of great concern to Israelis here, the 120 or so hostages remaining there.
On the ground in Gaza, there are reports that more than 200 Palestinians were killed in Israeli strikes in roughly the same area where the hostages were rescued. What have you heard about that, Tanya?
Yeah, there were reports early on today that these airstrikes were happening, also from eyewitnesses in Gaza. And this happened in Nuseirat, in central Gaza, Nuseirat, where a lot of displaced Palestinians have taken shelter there. It's a refugee camp. So we understand from the Ministry of Health there in Gaza, Hamas saying that 210 people were killed, 400 were injured, and we've been hearing from medical sources of the hospital, one of the last hospitals actually working there, that they have been taken in many injured people there are overwhelmed, and there has also been a lot of videos of the aftermath circulating on social media from the day to day there.
Okay, DW's Tanya Kramer with the latest tonight from Jerusalem. Tanya, as always, thank you. We want to stay on the story of the hostages today. I'm joined now by Zahiro Shahar-Mour from Tel Aviv. His uncle, Avraham Mundo, is still being held hostage in Gaza. Zahiro, it's good to have you with us. We appreciate you taking the time to talk with us today. I mean, 4 hostages rescued today. How did you feel when you heard the news?
Overwhelmed with joy. I personally know the father of Noa Argamani, Yaakov Argamani, and it was great seeing him getting united with his daughter after such a long time and so much waiting. It really filled my heart with joy, and we got great news for 4 families today in Israel, that 4 mothers will hug their son or daughter. Amazing news.
Does this give you hope that your uncle may also be brought home safe and sound one day?
I'm afraid not. Not in this way, not in a military operation. We know that my uncle is kept below ground and with probably much heavier security, and I don't think that there is no possibility of a military operation releasing all the 120 people that are still kept in captivity. The only way to get them back is signing a deal. There is no other way to get them back.
Well, where does that leave then your country, Israel, tomorrow? I mean, the Prime Minister, this is a good day for him. He did not have to answer the ultimatum from Benny Gantz about a plan for a post-war Gaza. I mean, do you see this as a green light for this war cabinet to continue on with this campaign in Gaza?
I'm afraid so. I'm afraid that the people who see short sight and see, okay, we released 4, maybe we can release the rest of them. There is no way. The only way to release the whole group of them together, whoever is still alive, of course, is signing a deal. And in order to sign a deal, the fighting must be stopped. And this is a price that Israel is still reluctant to pay. And this is why Benjamin Netanyahu had his, day in the sun, so to speak. He got a lot of nice photo ops. But tomorrow we are waking up to the same reality that we were yesterday and the day before that. There are still 120 people in 4 less. It's great relief, of course, for these 4 families. But 120 other families are still in the same situation as they were a week ago, a month ago, 7 months ago.
But, Zahira, do you think that the public mood in Israel will change enough if all the hostages were brought home on a condition that Hamas is allowed to remain intact in some form. I mean, is that something that the Israelis are willing to swallow?
Right now, I don't see the Israeli as willing to swallow something like this. But right now, the Israelis are not talking about the day after at all. So it's like what will happen after. We saw that parts of Gaza, the northern Gaza, the IDF had to come back again and sometimes again because after conquering a land, you need to give the keys, so to speak, to someone. To take control, to seize power over this land, and if you do not, then practically the Hamas is still holding on. So I think there must be some way to negotiate something, like a middle ground, maybe some sort of a political Hamas. I really don't know. But right now, this is a very hard pill to swallow for most of the Israeli public. But then again, public view do change.
Yeah. Well, Zahira, we appreciate you taking the time to talk with us, and we certainly wish you and your uncle all the best. Zahira Shahar Moore, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, here with me at the big table now in our studio is our Middle East analyst, Shani Rosanis. Shani, that gentleman there, he does not think that the current course of Israel is going to result in bringing all of the hostages back home safe and sound. He wants an end to the fighting. Is that what a majority of Israelis want tonight?
Well, that's exactly the rift tearing apart the Israeli society for months now. There are the hostages' families, but not just them, a big part of the Israeli society who support the need for a deal and understand that would probably be the only way to bring them, all of them, or the almost 120 left there, especially if you look at the numbers. In the last 8 months, Israel have managed to release or to retrieve alive only 7 of those hostages. Each one, we know they're all, even now in this case, one of them was kept alone and the 3 others together. So just scattered, they're all scattered in many places in Gaza Strip, and many of them also underground. So it's not really feasible. That's what a big part of the population said. On the other hand, more of the right-leaning part, also the right that is the part that is more important for Netanyahu as his base. There are those who feel like it's only military might and further pressure on Hamas that will bring more hostages home and will bring Hamas to make some concessions.
Hamas says, and we were reporting this earlier, that 200 Palestinians were killed today where those 4 Israeli hostages were rescued in Gaza. You've been working your sources. What have you learned?
Well, it's not by accident. Of course, this is all connected. The Israeli forces were not operating at the center of Nuseirat this morning at broad daylight when this operation started. So they had to find their way in, probably using some trucks. Maybe we hear some reports from Palestinians that these were actually supposedly aid trucks. If that was the case, we might see very severe and dire implications for the supply of aid into Gaza in the next days coming from that. But aside of that, the biggest problem was for the forces, once they have taken the hostages, to find their way out, to find a way to escape without, jeopardizing the lives of the soldiers and the hostages. And that required heavy bombardments and a lot of artillery from the Israeli forces. And this is where we see most of the casualties on the Palestinian side, many of them civilians, including, children and families. The way the Israelis say that, they point the blame on Hamas, saying Hamas have chose to embed the hostages among civilians, to operate within very densely populated areas of the Gaza Strip, and they should be the one to blame for that.
If these 4 hostages had not been rescued today, would we be here tonight talking about the collapse of the Israeli government, maybe the end of Benjamin Netanyahu?
It seemed to be that case, but now he seems to be stronger than ever. But we've also seen Benny Gantz, the centrist former general who was supposed to set a speech today, basically quitting his support for this government. He canceled it, but he also said that he understands that this is a tactic achievement, but it doesn't change the need for a strategic shift in Israel's policy. So Israel's problem are very much the same as they were yesterday. Nothing has, substantially changed in the situation. We will also see the Americans, Secretary Blinken, coming to Israel later this week. They want to see progress. They want to see dramatic strategic shift in the future of Gaza, in Israel's conduct with the war, and they're still hoping this can be achieved.
And, these are live pictures that we're looking at right now.
This is the mass support that we see of many demonstrations today, this night, supporting for the hostages and their release and the deal, pushing Netanyahu to go forward for the deal, claiming this is the only way to actually bring back all the hostages left without jeopardizing further lives of soldiers and of the hostages themselves. And there's also great concern from these families right now as we speak, because they understand Hamas will probably change the way it operates now in Gaza in order to protect the hostages kept, in order, to avoid any Israeli military operations further down the line.
Yeah.
So many of those soldiers, the hostages, like we were seeing today, they were held above ground. If any of them are still left above ground, many of them are now being, sent into the tunnels. And there's great fear for their lives if you talk to their family members in Israel.
Shani, as always, it's good to have you here in the studio. Good to get your analysis as well. Thank you.
You're welcome.